At the moment, the general school of thought is kind of be let's hide away from AI in schools. We know that in 10 years' time, AI is not going to disappear. It's just going to be stronger and more advanced. We really should be thinking about how do we train them to use AI properly? We are like the tape that just about is holding the system together. The system is breaking. Maybe it's broken.
The Operator Podcast by Circle Cloud.
Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Much appreciated.
Why don't we start with an intro? Tell us, who are you? What is it you do?
Yeah. So yes, I run a tutoring company, tutoring and homeschooling called HRB Education. We basically provide tutoring and homeschooling to special needs kids, and also a little bit targeted towards the more like high net worth sort of individuals. Basically trying to make people more engaged in learning and trying to show them how fun and interesting it is. Kind of break down from where schools kind of maybe let kids down a little bit. Basically, learning is fun, and that's what we're trying to do.
And what is your background?
I mean, I probably don't have the most conventional background for someone that does the job that I do in the company that I run, because actually, you know, when I was at university, I was studying like economics and geography, and now all of a sudden I run a teaching company. I took a very circuitous route to where I am today, which I wouldn't recommend, but also it's nice to kind of, you know, try a few things out, see what works, what doesn't work, and, you know, stick with whatever you enjoy. So to answer your question, so I was at university, I was doing tutoring on the side, something to make a little bit of money, you know, university's expensive nowadays. And I had my eyes set on working, you know, big banks, working data science, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I did the steps you're supposed to take. I went one by one through university, got a job, went the job. And
what was the job?
so I worked doing data analytics for an investment bank in the city.
Oh,
Which, you know, you kind of
that's
fighting.
a big job.
Yeah, exactly. You're fighting with thousands of people for, you know, 100 jobs, and you're really excited. I remember being like, damn, okay, perfect. I've actually got what I wanted to do. I have a plan after university. And I realized really quickly, maybe within a month of the job, I was like, something isn't quite working. Something doesn't quite fit. But I was like, I'm going to keep pushing. Maybe it's just, you know, university life is over and the 9 to 5 is being a bit tricky. And so I pushed a few more months. And after 6 months, I was like, this is not the life I want to live. You know, in the office, the routine, just being a number on a spreadsheet. I was like, this doesn't work for me. And so, you know, I quit, which...
Did you quit before because you were tutoring at university, and that was kind of like something you did, you enjoyed, but you did it as a side just to get some money. And then you went into this corporate job. Did you quit before you got into tutoring more, or were you already tutoring on the side still? Did you never stop tutoring?
I to be honest with you, it was Sunday evening. I know, and I was like, I can't go back to work tomorrow. Like, I physically cannot do this anymore. It's draining, not just my energy, but also just my mental health. And I was like, this is so not for me. Nothing about this is gelling. And so I quit, and without a plan, which I would not recommend. And so, you know, I very quickly went, okay, so if I haven't got a job, what am I going to do? Like, life costs money. And so I went back to the tutoring for a while, thinking this would be a good, like, short-term gap, little stopgap. And all of a sudden, you know, a month, 2 months, 3 months goes by, and things are going pretty well. And, you know, you just keep kind of letting that stopgap go longer and longer while you kind of think of another plan. And I'll admit, I didn't really give much thought to another plan, just because I was enjoying the tutoring and, you know, having had such a heavy resentment of the work I'd been doing, actually enjoying something, having a good time, and seeing the joy on the kids' faces. I was like, I'll do it a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And all of a sudden, what was supposed to be like a 2-month stopgap has now become an entire career, which didn't expect, I'll be honest with you, but, you know, here we are today.
And what was that moment when you were tutoring, you left your corporate job and you were tutoring just until you figured the next thing out? But there was a moment where you said, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to, you know, push this harder, because it's not just you now anymore. You now have a whole company around you. So what was the moment where you decided to give it a push?
There were probably two moments where I thought it's time to give this a further go. The first one was a lucky coincidence. And I think a lot of running a job, there's a lot of luck involved. You know, there are a lot of qualified people, but you need a bit of luck. So I was working, you know, that kind of intermittent period where I was doing tutoring as a side hustle while I was planning my life. And one of those families I was working with were like, oh, by the way, we have another family that want to work with you. And I was like, perfect. They want to book in a bunch of hours over Easter for the exams. And I was like, that's awesome. I love it. That's going to be my rent covered for the next 2 months. And didn't really think much of it. You know, we chat on the phone a little bit, booked everything in. And then maybe a week, 2 weeks before I was supposed to go out and start working with family, they were like, oh, by the way, we're not in London, we're in Switzerland. And I was like, you're in Switzerland? Okay, what does that mean for me? Like, are we doing it online? They're like, no, we're going to fly you out here and work with you. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, why not? And so here's me, you know, probably only 3 months into my tutoring career, being flown out to Switzerland and working with this lovely boy called Alex, who was amazing. And he did really, really well. And all of a sudden it went from being something that I thought of as only a university student would do to realizing actually there's a massive market behind this. Did that role, it did really well. I'm actually still in touch with the family today, which is 15 years later, which is insane. And yeah, I was like, after that, I'm going to fully commit, research the market much more, started working for some agencies, and then the next couple of years, let them dictate my career and, you know, get experience and start to grow and grow and grow. So that was like the first like big moment. It was kind of, you know, going from just working door to door in London to all of a sudden being international, which was bonkers.
You must have thought, this is cool, I can do this. And then what was the second moment?
The second one was I was working in Switzerland on a different job. I'd been there doing a term-long residential where you work with these kids, you homeschool them for an extended period of time. And I was looking at my paycheck and I was losing a third of it to the agency. And I was like, but all the agency have ever done has given me their phone number and then sit in their office. And I was like, I'm out here literally in the mountains working with this family and I'm losing a third of my paycheck to this faceless kind of corporation again. And I was like, this doesn't feel fair to me. Like, I understand the business behind it and I understand, you know, how it operates, but I'm like, I'm doing the work here. I'm not doing much. And so I went, you know what? I'm going to give this a go. And I branched out by myself this day I got home and started creating, you know, a bit of a brand, a bit of an identity. And, you know, that's where HRB came from, because as a business is actually my grandfather's initials. And he ran a small business based in Norwich. And I was like, he had that entrepreneurial spirit. Everybody in the town knew who he was, you know, and everyone would stop and say hi. And I was like, I like that kind of idea of like, you know, it's small scale, high quality, and you're the friendly face. And so I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a go. And this is probably the second piece of luck, is I started the business right as COVID began, which is probably counterintuitive for most businesses. But obviously with COVID, schooling was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to cope with this? We have 35 kids in a class and a teacher is not trained for online education. And so all of a sudden, the number of requests that we got for homeschooling probably went up by 10x within the space of a month.
How long had you been running the business for before COVID?
About 3 months.
Wow. So 3 months into the business, you saw like a massive spike in demand.
Massive. And I've never worked that much in my life. You know, there was a period where we were having to work like 14, 16-hour days, 7 days a week to keep up with the demand, to make sure that we had the systems in place and we could deliver the lessons safely as well. It was chaos, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because A, it gave us a great leg up, but B, also we made a real, I believe this, we made a real impact to those kids that otherwise were sitting in classes on Zoom doing nothing.
Yeah. And when was this? So when you started the business, was it you tutoring by yourself, or did you have tutors? Did you hire tutors straight away?
Hired tutors straight away. I had, obviously, having worked for nearly 10 years at that point, I'd met loads of great people in different roles. And I kind of went to them saying, look, you know, I'm going to start doing some stuff by myself in my own business. Are you interested in working under the brand name? Because we're going to have some great roles and we're going to try to treat you better than these other bigger agencies are. And that and a little bit of persuasion, a few of them came on board, and, you know, trying to make sure we had different skills. You know, I'm more of a social scientist, to make sure we had like a mathematician and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, we then slowly snowballed over the next like year to where, you know, with COVID, we'd managed to basically just zoom past the first 5 years of business and be established in the market, which is insane. Looking back at it now, it's like today we couldn't do that, but we were given that opportunity.
That's amazing. So you've created a brand now for what makes you stand out from the other agencies out there?
I mean, obviously I'm biased, but for me, the key thing is that we are very honest. We only deliver what we can deliver at the highest quality. We hire the best quality tutors that we have gone through an extensive process to vet them and check them. And more importantly, we keep the children at the center of what we are doing. So, if, for example, we're working towards an exam, we're not just going to pretend the kid is like this unending source of energy and keep working and working and working. We make sure that they get the breaks they need. We make sure that they are aware of the goal and why we're doing this, and essentially treat them, with respect, which unfortunately it becomes difficult in today's society with some of the agencies and some of the schools and the sizes. We basically have just tried to take the kids and put them back in where they should have always been, which is the center of the business model.
So you could consider yourself to be a premium player
Yes.
in the space, which allows you to then provide better service, higher care, more personal, and with a great amount of care for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. We take on only a certain number of kids per year. We could have grown quicker. We could have taken on more families. But as you were saying, we are personalized and we care. So we can't say, do you know what, we're going to take on extra 70 families tomorrow, because there's no way that we could go through and make sure that every single student was getting exactly what they needed, tailored to them at the right time. And so, it slowed the growth down a little bit, but it's made sure the quality has always stayed at number one.
When you start a business, you're going to make a choice, a decision, whether you want to go for quantity and a lower quality or less quantity but higher quality.
100%.
And we made the decision to go for quality. We're a premium player as well in the telephone system supply service, and that's paid off because you can still try and organize your business in a way operationally that you can do more quantity, but as long as the quality remains high, then that's the key point.
Exactly. And that's kind of been the last like 2.5 years is, okay, how do we maintain this level of quality as the quantity begins to grow? And, we were having this conversation off camera. I was saying that actually hiring the right people has become our foremost decision over the last 6 months, because if we don't hire the right people, our business model collapses inwards. And so actually we have made sure and put in probably more checkpoints than what we need to make sure that we get the best quality tutors and teachers working for us.
So would you say for you, what's a bigger challenge or what's more forefront of in your mind right now? Is it to hire people to work for you, or is it to grow the business and get more clients?
Counterintuitively, it's the first.
Wow.
Because in my mind, if we hire the right tutors and the right teachers and they deliver the right lessons, we are going to see the reputation and word of mouth continues to grow. And in a market like ours, where you're working people's kids, when a parent recommends you to another parent, it comes with such a weighting that you've got your foot in the door already, much more than placing adverts somewhere. And people's like, but everyone says that. And so I believe, and our business model is that if we have the right quality in place and we do that over and over again, we will see networking will grow. And, the way in which we judge ourselves is how often we get referred to other families. And, for some people, we are the 5th or 6th recommendation down the line. Family 1 recommend us to 2 to 3 to 4. And that's a really nice feeling because continually we've met and improved their expectations. And I'm like, yeah, we actually do a good job.
If you needed to do marketing, that would be great to put in your marketing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a nice feeling because, as I say, it's for most people, it's the most trusted thing that they have is their kids, and so providing them with the quality they feel happy with is fantastic.
Is that your main way of growing the business? Is it through referrals, or do you do other ways of marketing for growth?
Yeah, I mean, we do school partnerships, we do advertising online, but the word of mouth referrals beats those by a distance, by a margin. For us, even now, we still get 75% of all of our new business through referrals.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, it's so easy that, you please a customer and, there's then 20 of the kids in the class, parents are all friends. They're like, hey, HRB or Thomas or whoever did a good job, why don't you try them? And all of a sudden, you're then sitting down and having a trial lesson, and that's 90% of the problem solved.
That's amazing. And what percentage would you say is UK-based versus international at the moment?
Ooh, we're probably about 60-40 UK international. The international side of things for us mainly comes from English speaking, big expat hubs. So Dubai, Singapore, even a bit of Hong Kong, although not as much nowadays. which is nice. Again, similar sort of thing where often one family has gone out there, or we've picked up a family out there, and then the network has just kind of grown over time. And take Dubai for example, it was literally one student 6 years ago, and now it's 15 students, all through word of mouth. We do no marketing for the Middle East whatsoever, and so we're managing 15 different families with multiple siblings, just because of one family.
Amazing. And how many tutors do you have on the books full time, or are they all consultantly part time?
They're a mix of both, depending on what they do, whether they do homeschooling, whether they do after school teaching. But at the moment we have 21 tutors that are a mix of, say freelance and full time. Most of which I've managed to work with for a number of years, which is nice, because it gives me, as a business owner, we all have that kind of concern over, who's working for us and what they're doing. But having worked with all but two of them, I guarantee that on a cold Monday in the middle of November, they're still doing a great job.
That's amazing. And how do you, because hiring is difficult, how do you make sure that the quality is there in a new tutor?
Well, this has been our biggest challenge, right? Is before I started the company, I'd worked with a number of tutors across different agencies and whatever, and I'd met people, and as a result, you'd seen them teach, and I respect what they're doing. But obviously that only goes so far. And so now our new process has kind of been to get teachers to deliver trial lessons, because an interview with me is a conversation. It's not actually the job you're going to be doing. And a referral or whatever it is only takes you to a certain level of trust. And so actually what we've found is that just seeing tutors deliver lessons to students is the best way to just test their mettle. It makes for an interesting first lesson, and some families that we worked for a long time have been very nice to let us do that on occasion. And it does mean that hiring is a slow process, but as I said, we want to get it right.
It maintains the quality.
Yes, 100%.
So you literally, you have a camera in the corner filming the tutor as he is or she is live.
Yeah. Or if it's based in London, sometimes I will sit in there, or someone else will sit in there and literally almost like a headmaster sit there and like write notes type thing. Because again, there is something for the intangibles you can't see on the camera, and just being there in the room is quite nice. I would admit it is intimidating, and the tutors have told us that they feel under pressure, but also, again, if you can perform under pressure, you can do your job in different areas. So it works.
That guarantees the quality. And it must be good for your customers as well to see that you do that, or know that you do that as well.
Yeah.
We send with our field sales team, we often send the field sales assessor.
Yeah.
So it's a manager or somebody that's a trainer goes out with the field sales guys.
Yeah.
And they set the appointment, and then we listen to see what they say and how they say it. Do they follow the criteria? Do they say the right things?
Yeah.
And yes, nerve-wracking for them, but that's exactly how you guarantee and ensure there's quality in the delivery.
100%. It's actually probably very similar in a different sector to what we do, because at the end of the day, it's the quality that matters, and you have to have proof. And anybody can do a good job in an interview sitting one-on-one, but that's having a conversation. It's actually nothing to do with the skills that my tutors need or your workers need. So actually getting them to do a mock job or a mock assessment is pretty good.
So Thomas, what is broken with the education system?
Oh, that is a hell of a question, because there are a number of different ways that we could go with it. But I will stick to some of the more like broad things, because otherwise I get on my high horse and start preaching. But for me, the number one thing has always been is that education has barely adapted or changed in the past 50, 60, 70 years. You look at how we teach, you look at the resources that we use, the curriculums that we use. Updates are slow to come by, if at all. And it just means that education is not now representative of the real world that the kids go into at some point.
Why is it? Whose fault is this?
I would argue there are a number of players. You could go top down. You could say, well, in the UK, we've had departments for education chairs who are not qualified for the role, who've been appointed because the government elects officials not based on experience a lot of the time, but based on who they're friends with. You could go up there. You could go to exam boards and how the relationship between exam boards and schools work. And that, again, doesn't necessarily breed the right kind of competition. You could go down the line of some schools are now owned by private equity firms, which, as we know, probably doesn't then place the students back as the number one priority. The shareholders then probably do. Take your pick of any of those. Or even take a pick of the fact that teacher salaries are now so poor that there is really no incentive to become a teacher. And so people would be great educators go and do other things. I only got into education through luck, and actually I love teaching. It's amazing. And there are probably a number of other people that do other jobs that would have been great teachers, but just have no incentive to become a teacher. So
it's a complicated problem,
yes,
isn't it?
absolutely.
Speaking to my wife this morning because I had somebody told me, why don't you homeschool your kid? Because we were talking about moving to a different country. And I said, well, he's got his friends in school and everything else. And she said, why don't you homeschool? And I thought about it and I thought, yeah, but then you wouldn't have all these friends.
Yes.
And my wife was like, no way, he's not being homeschooled, not a chance. But then I think the education system is it's the way it is, and they learn what they learn. But what about all the life skills around it that are missing from the education system?
Exactly.
So I thought maybe starting your own school would be a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Elon Musk has decided to do that, and he's got some different ways of teaching.
Yeah.
But really, does it have to come to that? There must be lots of private schools that have different ways of teaching. I went to Montessori school, and I find that the way that they taught there was quite good in the way that they let you find your own way and find your own path. I think interest-based learning is a lot better than being told what to learn.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on interest-based learning and Montessori-related? And are there any private actual schools? And would they have to follow, if it was a private school, do they have to follow the curriculum, or can they do what they want?
So with private schools, they still have to follow a government curriculum to a certain extent. We have seen, for example, a school in London called Latimer. They have decided to move away from doing GCSEs because they believe that's not representative of what we need to do their own, basically, curriculum. As long as they are still hitting the government's essentials for the national curriculum, they're totally able to do that. And I think it's a great idea because our tests nowadays just test your ability to memorize information. No one sits at a job and is then told, okay, recall 10 facts on this topic. Mm-hmm. Being a geography teacher, why am I making a student recall 10 facts about an eruption that happened 50 years ago? How does that help them when they're 25 and sitting at a desk or whatever? So I appreciate that there are some schools, some private schools that have kind of started to take this initiative and branch away from this is the exam board, this is what we're going to do, we're just going to follow it blindly, to kind of doing their own stuff, but they are still too far in between not doing that. There's not many of them. The issue is that these schools, even private schools, still have league tables, and league tables are still one of the ways we rank the qualities of schools. You look at it's like looking at the Premier League football table and saying, well, the team number one must be the best. Is that always the case though? There'll be a team mid-table that have developed all their own players, haven't bought anybody. Is that the same for schools? Should there be a school that has, taken interest-based learning and given these kids the best prospects for the future, even without getting the highest grades?
Because league tables are created by highest grades.
Yes, it's literally done by percentage of A stars or A's, number of people that have passed. It's just purely just counting numbers.
But in the curriculum that is provided to them, it's not a curriculum they can just make up.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's we probably have the wrong metric. Is a better metric either A, where students go in the future in terms of success, or B, even something even more subjective in happiness for the students. Now, I admit both of those are very hard to measure, but I think we should have that conversation of putting them back in first place and thinking of league tables as simply a helpful side thing. Just say, yeah, look, we do a good job, but that's not what we're going to preach to you.
A lot of kids don't do well in an exam environment, but they excel in other places and they end up doing great in life.
Yeah, 100%. I've seen a number of students I've worked with and even family members that, they are not designed to simply recall information in a 2-hour big sport tour where it's freezing cold and they're racked with nerves, but actually they have the skills to succeed in life. And again, especially with the development of AI, why do I need the skill of just being able to recall fact after fact after fact? Much, much more important is critical thinking. Do I trust the fact? Where does it come from? The perspective of that fact. What does that mean for me in the future or for what I'm doing? Critical thinking is a skill which is hard to teach. It's not easy, but it's so important in today's society where you have to question everything you're reading. Because we all know AI makes mistakes. But if you are trained and told you just believe it, your critical thinking skills aren't there and you just accept that fact and you go on with it. So
how do you teach life experience? How do you teach critical thinking in an environment that makes the kid want to learn. Because I found when I was a kid, I wasn't nervous at exams. I just hated being told that I had to learn something when I didn't want to learn it. If I wanted to learn it, and a lot of the times, I remember one time that I was into capitals. I don't know why. I got into it, and it came up in geography, and it was a whole semester about capitals. We had to learn all the capitals of different countries in the world. And I got a 10 out of 10. In Spain, you do it from 0 to 10, and 10 is the best. And I got a 10 out of 10 in every single capital exam. And I spent hours studying the capitals. Not required. I've not used it. I've not used it at all in the rest of my life, other than maybe in some pub quiz. It's not really been used. But the countries themselves has been useful. The capitals, it's been useful now and again in conversation. But even if I want to find a capital, I just look it up. But it's more, I learned it because I wanted to learn it. And other stuff in school that it's been jammed down my throat, I just reject it. And the same in university was the same. Just not interested. And I wonder how many other kids are like that are being forced down a path that they would do fantastic if they chose it. But because it's been forced down their throats, they're not taking it.
Exactly. And I totally agree with you, because my main subject I teach is geography, ironically enough. And it is in my mind, the most fascinating subject that exists, because it's the world today. We're sat here next to a port. There are a number of different things that you could look at. Instead, the curriculum hasn't changed. We look at eruptions and we look at tectonics, and we just don't necessarily look at the modern day society when it comes to geography. And as a result, people that would love it are just cut out of the subject because they're told, right, we're going to do plate boundaries like this, black and white textbook, and we're going to learn an eruption that existed before you were born. And there are so many people that we fascinated to look at, why it is that, certain countries develop different rates, or why is it that actually, for example, the earthquake in Turkey a few years ago, why there were so many issues with that earthquake versus other countries on better jobs. But we just don't have that. I've even taught lessons where we have a live stream of an erupting volcano in the corner as we are teaching, because it's literally happening right now. But yes,
you have to make it fun.
To make it fun, make it interesting, because most subjects are very transferable. So, for example, if you're teaching business at A level, there's no reason why you can't take that entire syllabus and make it about a business this person might want to start in the future, and say, right, we're going to learn about limited and unlimited liability from the perspective of this business that you might want to start, rather than just saying, here's the definitions, learn it, move on.
But from there, you can literally touch maths, you can touch philosophy, morals, you can touch all these different subjects related to you starting a business, because there's so many things involved.
100%. Now, I will say it's so much easier on a one-on-one basis, because you can tailor it, make it so much easier. I'm not saying it's easy to do in a classroom. I'm just saying we haven't done it anywhere near enough of a job of getting closer to that, of tailoring it. If you've got a class of 20 kids, you could take a poll of, okay, right, I want everybody to write down a sector I want to start a business in. Whatever sector gets the most votes, okay, boom, for the next month, everything that we do is going to be related back to that sector and that business. And you give yourself some buy-in, because kids can understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. Rather than just talking about meaningless case studies, you actually can understand when you're doing this and why you're doing it. But again, I sometimes feel that I'm giving people too much credit, and unfortunately there isn't the space, the time, the interest to get this done a lot. But it disappoints me, but hey, we're trying.
How has AI changed education until now, and how do you see it changing in the future? So if I'm a child learning, I gravitate to AI, not being a child, but if I'm in school learning, I'd naturally gravitate to AI. How can I trust it, and how do teachers currently react to it? What's the perspective on it?
At the moment, the general school of thought is kind of let's hide away from AI in schools.
Hide away.
Universities, for example, are trying to introduce in-person exams again, because they don't feel they can trust students to do coursework by themselves without using AI. You have that conflict between the AIs and the AI checkers, and obviously AI checkers can't keep up, and schools okay, we can't trust what you're writing. We're gonna shun it. We're gonna move away from it.
Because people are using AI to cheat rather than to learn. I use AI as a tool to learn. Surely it is a tool to learn as well.
And the word cheat, I think, is the most important word there. Is if you are someone that's been teaching for 60 years and you are they should read the textbook, write the notes, write the essay, you preview it as cheating. But to me and you, I think, they are being intelligent. They're using it to cut down their man hours. They're learning from it. And really, we should be thinking, okay, how do we use AI within the assignment, within the module, so that yes, the final product isn't just regurgitation, but you've used the AI model to improve what you're writing or learn a certain area, whatever it may be. And, education moves slowly. AI is moving very quickly. And what we are seeing is that rather than trying to embrace it and embrace a skill that these people are going to need to have, we know that in 10 years' time, AI is not going to disappear. It's just going to be stronger and more advanced. We really should be thinking about how do we train them to use AI properly? How do we train them to fact check what AI is giving us, making sure that the hallucinations get taken away from, rather than just saying, meh, I don't like it, it doesn't look right, or I don't understand it myself, let's just park it in one corner. So not great is my answer.
Similar to the software developers that I work with, sometimes some of them are open to exploring AI, but others are completely against it, and they shut themselves off, saying it's a tool, it's going to be transitory, nobody's going to use it, it's going to break your code base, etc. So a lot of people are shutting themselves off from AI and completely ignoring it. But I think it's a mistake. Yeah, 100%. I think we need to be open to change. How do you see this evolving in the education space, AI in the next 5 years? How do you see the impact that it will have on education? And will the education system evolve and teachers change their mind on how they're acting now about it?
I think it will have to evolve. There will become a situation where just by sheer weight and progression of AI, education system will have to catch up. The same way in which, computers in class and projectors, eventually they have to catch up. How that happens, I worry it will be the horse is bolted. Let's try now catch up with it. And then you're consistently having to innovate and change because you are behind the 8 ball.
Which the education system doesn't do very easily.
Exactly, 100%. So it concerns me a lot. I would love to see a way now where education says, do you know what, we are going to help you train so that you get certificates in quality of AI usage, or you understand how to prompt AI correctly to get the responses you're looking for, and kind of almost create a non-qualification essentially, where this isn't an exam, but you've gone through these sessions taught by experts and you now understand how to use AI. And then when you go and have a job interview as a graduate, you can say, look, I have these skills in AI. I can be a benefit to you. I've been trained in it. And now actually I can provide a service to your business that you need.
This question is going to be the opposite spectrum of what you do. But do you see any market now or in the future for an AI tutor? So a tutor that can one-to-one teach you on a subject on a one-to-one level, or maybe a school, an AI-based school, where the pupils within that school would have their own tutors one-to-one, but it's AI-based.
Do you know what's really interesting is we, for a while, were playing around with creating our own AI, because the one issue that I understand people having with kids using AI is safety, and the fact that the AI source information from everywhere. And so we were playing around with this AI that had a brick wall, and it was only given the information that you had to learn for the courses and nothing else. So that, you couldn't ask it questions that were, outside your age range or would give you questionable answers. We didn't quite get there. We didn't have the expertise, but from people I've spoken with, that is coming. To follow on then to whether there'll be an AI teacher, what I want and what we hope will happen is where, you have a session with me, we sit down and we learn about migration. I then give you some homework and you get stuck on a question. You then go to the AI bot, you have a conversation with it, and it has a conversation the way in which I'd have a conversation with you in the lesson. And so it gives you the same sort of answers and the same sort of styles, so that hopefully it can help you push through the problem. If you can't, you then come back to me, we have a phone call, we chat about it, we explain it in a different way. It's never going to be something, at least in its current variety, where it will be able to be a full-on tutor. Because for a lot of people, they're not learners by reading. They're learners through visual means or kinesthetic means. So they like to see things, feel things. But it will definitely be a helpful stopgap to providing people with answers that isn't just, here's all the information in one go away and take it. So it breaks down to smaller chunks, makes it more manageable, easy to understand, and delivered in a way which isn't just robotic language. I think that is coming soon.
You know, I don't think we're that far away from it. And it depends on what guardrails you set.
Yeah.
I was thinking of, because I built this tool called Coet that
Yeah.
we're using as a company brain internally. And it has access to all the different sources of data that we have, Google Drive, Gmail,
Yeah.
Slack, and Notion, and all the different document repositories. And depending on who you are within the business, you'll have different access levels to the documentation. And that's what Coet can do. It can access the documents based on who you are and who you are asking.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just regurgitate documents. It does, you know, with Google, when you search something on Google now, it gives you like a summary of what it is, that it gives you the answer.
Yeah.
So Coet will give you the answer based on what you have access to, so you don't have to search for it.
Yeah.
So then I thought, okay, so it's based on the documents that we have already, and it gives you the answers to the questions you're asking.
Yeah.
What about doing it on a more interactive level? Rather than talking to it on Slack, which is what we do now, we can create a telephone agent where you can phone in and it will give you the answer verbally.
Yeah.
And then you can take that a step further, which that bit I haven't worked out yet, is doing it via video, where you can have an avatar talking to you. And at that point, you can literally have the tablet set out here. You can just talk to somebody saying, hey, what's the longest river in the world? And that kind of geography-based tutorage could maybe happen as a complementary
100%.
effort to what you do.
100%. I think the key to that being successful is it's got to make sure that it doesn't just say, right, here's your question, here's your answer. We need to make sure that we help these kids to learn and kind of get the answer themselves, because a lot of the time people, not even kids, people ask you questions that they actually answer themselves. And part of my job is making them realize they know the answer and making them get there through a journey. And if we can get AI to that point where, you know, it can kind of have that conversation, okay, think about this topic. Can you then link it back to this and kind of make you do the work yourself for the student? Maybe not for you guys in the office, too much time taken on from work. But as a student, that is really helpful, because then you're not just reliant on something question answer.
That's the true learning element, when you're able to connect the dots in your head, because you understand it.
Exactly. And I think that's the only bit right now that it doesn't quite do well enough yet.
Because it does answers.
Exactly. It's too literal. It's like, this is the question, this is the answer. I don't think it'd be long, as you say, till it gets to that, where you can program it to make it work for you. For me, exciting times. I think other people concerned and nervous, but you've got to embrace it. You got to enjoy it.
Yeah. And how are you using AI for your agency?
One of the biggest things that we've used it for, which you may argue is part of the problem, is we use it to increase the number of like question banks that we have. You know, as a student, if you are revising for an exam, there are only like 3 or 4 past papers available. You can use AI, you can train it on that exam board. Here's the questions, here's the syllabus, here's the style. This student is struggling on erosion. Give me 10 more questions in the exact same style.
Oh, that's a great use case.
And you can keep going and keep going until you guarantee you've got it nailed. Now, that does come back to what we were saying about, you know, versus just learning stuff versus like applying it. But in the system that we have, it's a really good use. The other use we have, which is slightly more interesting, is more like a research kind of use. You know, we are trying to help students to understand different topics. It's like, here is a topic, go away and research it, use the AI, see what you can learn, come back with 5 questions you want to ask me about what you've learned on this topic. Because as you say, I don't want to say, we're doing this topic, stick them in this box. I'm like, go take half an hour, go ask the AI any question you like on this topic. Anything you don't understand, come back to me, we'll have a conversation about it, and we'll learn some bits you don't need to learn, but it gives you a wider area of knowledge, which is nice. You want to learn more about it. You're passionate about capitals, go ask it for random capitals, and then we'll have a conversation about that city. Yeah.
I think if you really want to learn, AI is great, because I've used it before, either with Claude or with Grok or with whatever voice model I'm on. I activate the voice model and I just talk to it. And I sometimes do it at bedtime with my son. I sometimes read a book. Most of the time I don't, and I end up getting my phone and we end up talking to the AI. And we were talking about the asteroids, then we were talking about the planets, and we were talking about the solar system, and normally dreamy things, you know, like big, massive ideas. And we just poke them down. Like the other day was about the black holes. And he goes, what happens if a black hole eats another black hole? And I was like, oh, that's a good question. And then we asked it, and then we started exploring the nature of physics and energy and all that. And we really got deep. If you make it fun and you're into the conversation, I think that's what it's all about.
100%. You fuel their inquisitive nature, because they are inquisitive. unfortunately, we beat it out of them a lot of the times with the system that we have, but kids are insanely inquisitive. They, black holes, I have no idea. Actually, a lot of physics teachers probably wouldn't have the exact answer to a lot of those follow-up questions because they go so niche. But then AI is like, boom, here it is, delivered in a way which is understandable, makes you want to ask more questions. And as you say, it actually helps. But, there are still people that need to be converted, but we're getting there.
I hope that it evolves in the education system. And I also hope that there's some movement from the current regime of how you need to learn over time. And it doesn't take Elon Musk to start a school to achieve it.
Yeah. I mean, you say that. I think, unfortunately, it probably will. I think, change is really hard to come by in this sector. And I think change happens by force. And if it takes what was a trillionaire for a short while to change the industry, then, so be it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think there'll be many more like him and others that create their own education frameworks. And what is your thought on the Montessori framework?
I like the idea of letting kids decide, where they want to learn and what they're interested in. I think there needs to be a certain level of guardrail, because if you ask me when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, what I want to do is I want to do PE every day. So there should be choice within a framework.
I think I agree, yeah, because you can't just let it go off the rails. And also they need to have a base foundation of knowledge.
Exactly.
Understanding, right? Maybe not knowledge, understanding of the world and principles.
Exactly. And this is the thing is take maths, for example. I'm not a math teacher, but, I was doing some maths with a 11-year-old yesterday, actually. And we were just learning about multiplication in a very abstract way. And I was like, does this really benefit the kid given there are calculators out there nowadays that can do it for you? I'm not saying math is not important. I'm saying that, again, these are things we need to think about in terms of how we teach them. It's you've got to do maths. But maybe we take the kid to the shop and say, right, here's your budget of 20 quid. You need to make a meal for people. So we bring in the idea of healthy eating. You need to hit these 4 food groups, these 5 food groups, whatever it is. Go, stick within your budget, go buy some stuff. I'll be at the till here. I'll see you in 20 minutes type thing. And you're then getting different skills merged together in a way which is enjoyable and practical.
They also don't know what they actually want to do when they're older, even though they might think they might know. Exactly. They don't have a clue.
No one does, especially given there's so much information out there. You're just overloaded with it. No one really knows. So give them the broad set of skills so that if they change their mind, they're not like, oh God, I'm not qualified for this.
Yeah, because maths, for example, I'd say, you don't need to know multiplications and additions because you got a calculator. But on the flip side, if you want to run a business, if you want to be able to be good at sales, if you want to be able to have negotiations face to face, you need to be quick. Yeah. Otherwise, you might lose a deal or you might get a deal.
Get it wrong, which is the worst thing.
Exactly. So I get it. So it's difficult to just say, just learn about astronauts or just learn about something that interests you. You have to give them a foundation. Yeah. So that it's never a single answer, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is we are giving suggestions, we are giving, broad spectrum advice. There is no, if there was a golden bullet, someone had done it by now.
Yeah.
There are, suggestions and paths, but I strongly believe in you give people, choice within a set boundary.
Yeah.
So that, they're actually getting benefit, but also they're not like, oh, I've got to do English right now, when actually they feel like doing science. Mm-hmm. Do English tomorrow instead. It's fine.
And going back to your business, what is the hardest thing right now in growing your business? What are you finding that, other than the recruiting aspect, which we've touched on, what would you say is the hardest part of scaling your business and growing it?
The hardest part of scaling it has probably been how complicated the education system has gotten. So, when you're 17, 18 years old, you now have A-levels, or you could do the IB, which is the European system. You could do the AP, which is the American system. You could go do an apprenticeship. You can do a BTEC. You can do a CTEC. All of a sudden now, there are 6 different things we have to be experts in and be able to offer top-notch advice to families from all different walks of life. Whether they're coming to the UK, they're leaving the UK, whether they want to go to university. And it's become such a segmented market, but you're expected to know everything about that market.
And that's the UK only, right? If you go into another country, it's completely different.
Don't even get me started. It just continues and continues. And it's like, I say me and a lot of kind of people I work with, and a lot of the time having to understand different pathways, different exam boards, different routes, what fits the best students. And they're constantly getting minor tweaks. Okay, well, how does that affect future? This university said actually now they're more inclined to looking at IB scores over A-level scores. Okay, how does that affect our consultancy part of the business? How are we going to suggest what to do? And that has always been the hardest thing, because sometimes we've had to turn families away because we just go, I'm just not enough of an expert in that niche piece you are doing to be able to give you 100% advice.
That's good that you do that.
And we, you know, as you say, we get families a lot of time coming to the UK for secondary school or university that have done systems that are so different to what we offer and so different to how we do it. I'm just like, I can suggest someone else to speak to, but we cannot guarantee that we have the foremost knowledge. And we get that a lot, especially with people coming, you know, from sort of Central Asia, where, you know, isn't in a high volume, and they do systems we just don't have or don't know.
Do you teach English?
I do, not as much as I used to. You know, my hours of teaching have dwindled as the business grows.
Within the agency, I mean.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because my mum is an English teacher. She does it in Spain, and she teaches English to Spanish kids.
Yeah.
So she does the whole. I mean, you got the PET, you got the CET, then the PET, I think it is, the Cambridge exams, and then you got the first certificate, then you got TEFL.
Yeah. TEFL is, I mean, that's like kind of the
teach English,
the big teach English, and you know, a lot of what we see nowadays is people when they're doing gap years, but also kind of want to get some experience or go do TEFL abroad type thing. It's become quite almost like slightly trendy thing to do. It's like, you know, do a bit of a gap year, you know, go to a primary school, you know, in not Africa, in like China or like Southeast Asia somewhere, do a bit of TEFL, you know, get some teaching experience, and then, you know, then come back to doing whatever's next.
You know, it's funny because she put me through this path as a kid. I was like 10 or 11. I was a Spanish kid that spoke Spanish in school and Catalan, and English was like my mother language at home, but I didn't know how to write English or speak English properly. And then she put me through the PET, the CET, and then I did the first certificate. And at the time I was thinking, this is a waste of time. But I am learning, but it's so difficult. It's like writing these long things and grammar and all that stuff. But now looking back, and it's happened multiple times throughout my career where I have to write something or I have to speak to somebody. My writing in English is better than native English speaker.
100%. This is ridiculous, but the threshold on like the IELTS, for example, is higher than our GCSE English a lot of the times, and that's insane. It's like we hold international people to a higher standard in our language than what we do to our domestic peoples.
Wow.
Which again, you know, leads to a whole different trapdoor of issues. We see that a lot where, you know, same with different qualifications, we treat international students with a higher threshold, a higher barrier. You know, when I worked in Switzerland, the family I was working with, the second one, the two girls, they were trilingual by 12. And I'm talking, they were reading, writing to a level, you know, not far off like 18-year-olds in the UK in English, but also could do it in German and in French.
Why is that? Why is it that international teachings of English have to have a higher caliber? Because I noticed that when I was in Spain, I did a year of university in Spain, and I learned the degree was telecommunications engineering, but it was more designed at like satellites and it was a lot of maths, a lot of calculus, a lot of algebra. I came to the UK and I did audio technology, and again, it's a degree, and it was this time it was about audio. Yeah. But the level of maths was
so much
what I was learning when I was 12 and 13, like fractions and things like that. And I went to Bristol because I had a friend of mine that was at university studying, I think, physics. And I went to one of her classes. I think she was in the first or second year. And it was really basic maths. So why is it that the level of maths that kids learn in GCSE compared to the level of maths that somebody would learn in Spain in an international bachillerato? Why is it lower level? Am I getting you started on something here?
No, I mean, there are two different schools of thought in that. When you look at more of like the IELTS English stuff, a lot of it is stereotypes, where we make the barriers harder for you to come to the UK because we don't want people coming from certain countries. So you make the barriers harder, so it's harder to get in.
Wow.
I won't touch on that because that's not where I'm qualified in.
But you reckon that is the case? It's truth?
Yeah, 100%. You know, again, I will speak from the perspective of someone who did a geography degree. As a country, we want highly skilled migrants, you know, and a lot of the news discourse is about lowly skilled migrants, and we don't necessarily get the debate correct. We just call people migrants. And so one of the best things has been is like, you know, how do we get people out? How can we make sure they don't qualify? Let's make barriers to entry really quite high, make it harder for people to qualify to get into this country. Let's make the IELTS test harder. Let's make the citizenship test for the UK harder. You know, you go let me sit the UK citizenship test. I'm not passing, and I'm a teacher.
I've got an Egyptian friend that did that test, and he really struggled to pass it.
100%. And whereas we make people who aren't even former Commonwealth countries know about kings from the 1600s, just because the harder the barriers are, the less people that pass. And so there's that side of things.
Got it.
Where it's like, we're going to make it harder, less numbers, less of a migrant issue, hot political topic, perfect, easy peasy. The schooling side of things, we've become, we're not going to let people fail. Rather than stretching people, it's let's move the level downwards so it's harder to fail as a result. That means that then the level of the qualification is then worth less. You can see this even within GCSE and IGCSE, which is the international version of our exams. The IGCSEs are harder. A lot of the top schools take the IGCSEs to have a higher burden to pass. Because otherwise, if you do the GCSEs, with some of them, we're just watering them down little by little. We're taking out this little bit here and that little bit there.
Why is that? So it looks like more people are passing. So it looks like we got more people graduating from GCSEs.
Because would you rather fund schools and take money from other areas of the budget, or would you just make it look like people are passing and take that as a headline and say 80% of kids pass this exam?
Yeah.
What's easier to do? Definitely just water it down. I get it, the budget at a government level is set and there's an opportunity cost of what you've got to pick. Education seemingly is never that high on the list, which is worrying as a teacher. Like, I would love to change that. And so as a result, it's just, let's just make it a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier. And, let's just take this from GCSE and put it in the A-level course instead. And all of a sudden now we have the problem where the jump between GCSE maths and A-level maths is so big that a lot of people that get like A's in maths in year 11 really struggle in A-level maths because they're now having to learn all this extra stuff because we've watered down this course, which is something which is not talking about a lot, but is a real issue if we keep going down that path.
I think the deeper you scratch, the more broken things are.
100%. What I would say is, in a proper system that works, companies like mine would be much, much smaller because there wouldn't need to be us in existence because the system wouldn't be failing so much. We, at the moment, are like the tape that just about is holding the system together. The system is breaking. Maybe it's broken. Hard to say whether we're what side of the line we're at, but it's concerning.
Luckily, there's companies like you around.
Yeah, but also, we can only help so many kids. There are loads more kids out there that we don't have the reach to or don't have the services, and the system then just fails them, which is disappointing beyond belief. Beyond belief.
Motivation to scale up then?
100%. But, at the end of the day, it's like I would love to tear down our education system and start again. Obviously I'm biased. I think I know all the answers. Everyone always does. But just have people who are qualified in qualified roles. And, model ourselves on countries like Finland that actually, they do less testing and they let kids be kids and it's more interesting and more engaging versus the, at now, year 6, age 11, massive test. Like, as an 11-year-old, that much pressure, you get 11, 12 years old that are burnt out. That's it's ridiculous.
You ever thought about politics to try and make a change?
I haven't, mainly because I speak my mind, and given how politics is going nowadays and people giving just atypical answers probably wouldn't go down very well.
Well, I think it should.
100%. I think if you ask a question, I give a direct answer. People don't like it always. I went on a panel once and got in a very interesting, I call it debate. It was an argument with someone. He was a 65-year-old teacher that thought things were perfect the way they were. And here I was, 5 into my career saying change everything. And it didn't go down very well. But ask me a question, say my family's, I'll give you the direct answer. I'm not going to say this kid's going to pass if he can't. And I'm not going to sit here and lie about things because it's not the right thing to do. So, yeah.
It's good. Honesty.
Yeah.
It's a good policy.
100%. It's just, so many people now put on a smile and just nod. It's let's actually get the information we need rather than just, not trying to hurt people's feelings.
Amazing. So, Thomas, if somebody needs to reach out to you, how do they find you?
You can just search in HRB Education. We're there. You can give us a message, and we're happy to help wherever we can.
Amazing. Thanks for being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me.